So Camilla is asking, do frogs symbolize demonic spirits? Got a lot of questions about frogs lately.
And by the way, I just want to point out that Bibleask, according to Google, are one of the leading experts on this question of what the frogs are. So
we're getting a lot of these.
Tina, explain it.
No problem. So actually, what's funny is a few years ago, we actually had Bibleask was quoted in an article. I think frogs were used in a movie or something. So somebody was like, "Why frogs?" And they quoted Bibleask. So we've been featured in a few things. But as far as frogs symbolizing demonic spirits, yes, absolutely. You read this in the book of Revelation, chapter 16, verse 13. And if you go there in Revelation 16, verse 13, it reads, see if it'll get pulled up. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs coming out of the mouth of the dragon, which is the devil. And you read about that in Revelation chapter 12. So out of the mouth of the beast of Revelation 13, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So there are 3 frogs that are mentioned here in Revelation 16 that come out of these 3 entities that are basically in the last days. And I've always thought, like, why frogs? Like, what's the symbolism and why these evil spirits are like frogs? And if you think about it, a frog, how does it catch its prey? With its tongue, right? And the tongue in the Bible is always about, basically your words, what you speak. And so how the devil works is through lies. And that's how the devil, it says the dragon, the beast who basically is empowered by the dragon, and the false prophet, and any false prophet is of the devil, uses lies to trap its prey. That's what Satan did with Eve in the beginning. He used lies to, entrap her into sin. And it's in the same throughout time. His devil hasn't tried anything new. There's no new thing under the sun. He will use his lies until the end of time. Great deceit, great deceptions to entrap many people into receiving the mark of the beast and, being deceived into this false system that he has. Now, just as far as frogs go in the Bible, there's only really, as far as I know, only one other mention of frogs, which is kind of interesting that they're mentioned in the book of Exodus. During the time, they're one of the 10 plagues of Egypt. And if you know anything about the story of Exodus, it's God's people who were enslaved and they were breaking free. They were going into the promised land. And it's really symbolic of what God's people are going through today. Here on this earth, we're suffering, but one day we will be made free and we will go into the true promised land, which is heaven. And if you read in Exodus chapter 8, it's speaking of one of the 10 plagues which fell upon Egypt. It's one of the first ones, actually. In Exodus chapter 8, verses 7 through 15 is kind of the whole summary, but I won't make you read all of it. But if you go to Exodus chapter 8, I'll kind of summarize it. And that basically in verse 6, we see Aaron, he stretches forth his hands and the frogs come out as one of the plagues. Now in verse 7, it says that the magicians imitated this deception and that they brought, the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And so then as much as, Pharaoh wasn't convinced completely by this because his magicians were able to also produce frogs. However, if you read something very interesting in verse 8, and actually, can we pull this on the screen? Exodus chapter 8, verse 8. And I find this really interesting. It says, then Pharaoh called for Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he may take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will let the people go that they may sacrifice to the Lord. Now we know that, keep reading, that Pharaoh did not let God's people go at that point in time. But even Pharaoh at this point recognized that there was only one person powerful enough to get rid of the frogs. Like his people might have been able to make these frogs, but they couldn't get rid of them. Only God can. And the same is true in the end of time. And honestly, any aspect of our lives, whenever there's deceit, the only person that can take away the deceit is God and his truth. And so it's so important that we're in God's word, in the Bible, reading his word and staying close to him so that we can see through the deceit in this world and that we can overpower it by the power of the Lord and by his alone. So yeah, that would be my input on the frogs of Revelation 16:13. You guys have any other thoughts?
Nice. I just want to say, I think it's actually a good lead into the next question, if we want to just go there. But Faye, if you have ideas.
Oh, no, I was just going to say,
Okay.
I really love that part that you said, Tina, about the tongue. How does the frog capture its prey? It's with its tongue, and that the tongue was the thing that Satan used, and the words, that's what has been deceiving people from the beginning. So I just found that very appropriate and really well said.
Well, thank God he's the author of truth. So anything good is from him.